Welcome to the Microsoft 365 Business Technical Fundamentals series. In this video, we will be discussing the mobile application management capabilities that were introduced when Microsoft 365 Business was released, and then we'll discuss the capabilities that were added with the April update. The mobile application management and mobile device management capabilities of Microsoft 365 Business are delivered by Microsoft Intune. It's an endpoint management solution that can help you manage your Windows, Android, iOS, and macOS devices from the cloud. Starting on the top left-hand side, we can see that for company-owned and managed devices, we really want to be managing the device from the device on upwards. As we start moving across to the right-hand side, we have scenarios where we really only want to be managing the data related to the user's corporate identity without having to take control over the device. So how do we do this? Well, because we can take these different approaches for iOS and Android, it means that we can use either the Microsoft 365 Business Portal to go through and set these options, or alternatively, we can jump into the Intune Blade inside of the Azure portal, and we can really start configuring a lot of additional settings from within there. So let's jump in and take a quick look at both of these. With mobile application management on personal devices, this is really where we go through, and it's about a very simplified approach to managing iOS and Android using the identity within the different applications that are listed here in that screenshot. While the more frequently used Office mobile apps can be selected through this interface, there are more apps available for configuration through the Intune portal if that's a deployment requirement. Users are responsible for installing the apps onto their devices. There's no mechanism in this case to go through and actually push those mobile apps out to the device because it's a mobile application management solution, not a mobile device management solution. So we can't assign the apps to the device. Instead, what we do is we configure the installed app based on the user sign-in that's used. The focus of the policies we can apply through the Admin Center are really focused on preventing data leakage. When we use mobile application management, we can wipe the work-related data, but we cannot delete the user's data or reset their device. In order to apply MDM policies to iOS and Android, we need to create these in the Intune Blade of the Azure portal. We can apply policies that restrict mobile operating system features that aren't required, or for configuring the settings that we do require. We can also start targeting the devices for application deployments from the Play Store or the App Store. Because we are managing at the device level, we can do a complete wipe or reset of the device if it is lost or stolen. For those of you with environments with Mac OS users, you'll notice here that we can actually target those devices as well. Let's switch over to the Microsoft 365 Business Admin Center and then to the Azure portal so you can see where these policies can be configured. Here we have the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and what we want to focus on here is if we go down to Device Policies, you'll see here we've got the option to add the policy, edit a policy, or delete a policy. Before we jump in and actually create a policy, let's jump into the Device Policies page, and you can see that this is a new tenant, so I don't have anything configured in here. So let's go through and add a policy so we can start seeing the types of policies that may be required. Now, as mentioned, we've got the ability to go through and choose iOS or Android policies. Remember here that we're talking about application management. We'll switch over to device management shortly. But let's just, for the sake of this one, we'll start off with application management for iOS on this side. So protect work files when the device are lost or stolen, deleting work files from an inactive device. So for those devices that stay tucked inside a drawer because you've replaced them and they sit there with sensitive corporate data on them for an extended time period. But there's a few different settings we can see here. We can control how people access Office files on mobile devices, and you can see that they really try to make it simple for you to go through and just use the on-off options as well as a couple of numerical values. And here you'll see the default apps that are included. Obviously very heavily focused on the Office 365 productivity apps, and who do we want to start deploying this setting out to? So in this case, it's saying all users. So if I just give that a name, so I'll call this one iOS policy, being very creative, and I'll just go through and add that one. So Normally you'd spend a bit more time making sure you're choosing the appropriate options, but for the sake of this one, I just wanted to quickly run through and show that to you. Now, if I wanted to go through and create an application management policy for Android, I could go through that same process, and you'll see that it's pretty much the same settings that we get across both iOS and Android when it comes to mobile application management. Once we switch over to the Azure portal, this is where we can jump into the Microsoft Intune Blade and start configuring the devices using mobile device management, or alternatively we could use this to put more control over the mobile application management policies like we just created. So if we start off with device configuration, we can see here that, again, it's a new tenant, so we don't actually have anything deployed yet. We're not managing any devices. So let's go through and create a new profile. So in this case, the profile that we want, we'll call this one Android Lockdown. So obviously we're going to target Android. And what you'll notice here is that there are several different OSs. We've got Android Enterprise, iOS, macOS, Windows Phone, as well as Windows 8.1 and Windows 10. But for this one, we'll just focus on Android. And now for the profile type, what we want to do in this case is apply device restrictions. But you can see that there are additional settings here depending on what we're trying to do with the device. So if we need to add Wi-Fi certificates, if we need to add VPN profiles, if we need to add additional certificate types, alternatively, if we're using Samsung devices with Knox capabilities, there are additional Knox capabilities that we can enable that will leverage the containerization approach that the Samsung Knox devices support. But instead, we'll just choose device restrictions here. Now, we're not going to go through all of the different settings, so let's just start off with one of them, which is the one at the top, general settings, just so you can get a feel for the types of policies. So some of the things in here around the camera, additional things around, how do we work with shared devices, and obviously there's a few different settings that we can go through and work with in here. And as we start going through the different options, you can see that there are going to be quite a few different options that we can configure. It really depends on what it is you're trying to do with the device. Now, one of the things that I've mentioned is that when we are working with the mobile platforms, when we're doing mobile device management, we can go through and start doing mobile application deployment. And we go through and use the mobile apps section of Intune where we can go through and then we can start saying what apps we actually wanted to be deployed out to the different users or devices that are out there. So if I go to apps, obviously right now I'm not actually going to have any apps in here, so I'd need to go through and choose what type of app I'm going to deploy out to those devices. So it's pretty easy to go through, and the top two are the ones that we're focused on here, Android or iOS. If I choose iOS, if we want to search the store, let's say I want to deploy Word Mobile out to those. Word is a generic term, so I'll use Word Mobile knowing that we should be able to filter a little bit more, and it's obviously not cooperating there. I don't think it's refreshed yet. There we go, Microsoft Word. We can select that. Now for the app information, what you'll see here is that it will go through and it's picked up some of the information across from the store. So it's got the naming, it's got the details. Now if we take a look at the description, it's just pulled in the description from the store. It's populated the publisher information. It's got the minimum operating system requirements. So it can go through, query the App Store and then pick up some of these bits so that you don't have to make these decisions. So things that you probably do want to start doing is saying that, we want, for the category, we might want to say that Word is what would we put it under? I think productivity app is a pretty safe bet. Do we want to make it a featured app in the company portal? So if we're pushing out the Intune company portal app, we could have this as a featured app to make sure that people can install it if we make it an optional installation. Now you can see here that there are additional fields if we want to put in our own privacy settings, etc., making sure that any kind of owner in the organization who's responsible for ensuring that they're on top of it to make sure that if there are any updated requirements that we do get that information in here. Now I don't know if I've clicked on enough of the options just to be able to hit OK and have it save that, but it looks like it's OK. I can add that. And now the final thing that I'd need to do after I've gone through and saved that out is I'd actually need to go through and assign that. And what you'll see at the top here is that it's actually telling me exactly what I just said. We need to assign the application to at least one group. So if I click on assignments, in this case I can say assign this to all users, for example, but realistically I'd want to go through and refine it a little bit further just to make sure I'm targeting those that really need to get that app. So that's just a really quick look at what we can do over on the Intune side. Before I completely get out of this portal, I just want to highlight one of the things that you may have noticed. If you're not overly familiar with the Azure portal, what you'll notice here is I've gone through, I've renamed that so that it's just Microsoft 365 Business, and I've cleaned up and removed items that aren't necessarily related to Microsoft 365 Business. Instead, I've just pinned the items that are important to me, that are important for this Microsoft 365 Business tenant. So this will take me into Azure Active Directory, this will take me into Azure Information Protection, and obviously Intune, that's where we just were. You've seen that there are different approaches that can be taken with managing devices depending on the requirements of the organization. And it's easy to mix and match these approaches if we need to control company-owned devices as well as personal devices.